They still believed they could take Tripoli too. A moment's training and the recruits were throwing themselves to the front. But without the help of the West, they couldn't compete with Gaddafi's well-equipped army. The momentum was slowing. They began losing ground. But would the rest of the world really be prepared to intervene to help the rebels? Gaddafi had struck lucrative oil deals with the West after reinventing himself as a harmless cartoon dictator. World leaders had rushed to meet him. Did Libya's oil blind them to the way Gaddafi was treating his own people? Now, the curtain's been lifted in Benghazi. For the first time, we got access to the place where some of the secrets of his human rights abuses were hidden. The Benghazi headquarters of internal security, the secret police. Only its hated officers or people suspected of dissent have ever seen inside it until now. Dr. Ahmed knows better than most what went on here.
This is the most frightening place in the city of Benghazi, or even Libya. The secret police were everywhere, in hospitals, schools, universities, and every workplace.
The secret police fled for their lives during the fighting. Dr. Ahmed was one of the first inside, filming himself as he raced through the building. Any symbols of the regime were torn apart with animal ferocity. He showed me along the corridors where days earlier they'd rushed from room to room, searching for files on relatives and friends who'd been targeted. Some were kept, but most were torched.
When this building was burnt down and all the secret police disappeared, the nightmare came to an end. Nobody will track us anymore.
Look at all this. It's debris from a police state. Filing cabinets full of information about people's political affiliations, their religious beliefs, personal information. And it's all, of course, used to intimidate and to inject fear into the local population, and ultimately, to control them. This is where people picked up by the secret police were taken, the detention block. Not for conventional criminals, but for those suspected of dissent. Dr. Ahmed was here simply for having no ID when stopped late one night.
I spent hours here, but it felt like years. Imagine the feelings of those who actually were in here for years, cut off from the outside world and unable to talk to anyone.
These are heavy-duty cell doors, and on the inside of each of them, they've been covered with graffiti, people's names and the dates they were here. And somebody here has drawn a kind of makeshift calendar, and they've ticked off each of the days that they've served. And then over on this one here, it just says, "I miss you, Mum." Some former detainees had summoned up the courage to explore inside. One man was here, showing his mother where he'd been during the time he was missing. He wanted her out of earshot before he described how he'd been treated.
They used many brutal types of torture I couldn't begin to describe. From burning with fire, hanging, ripping out fingernails with pliers. I even have scars on my back to this day due to this.
I came across this man, searching for evidence. His son was brought here 16 years ago. Since then, silence. Just a photo in the Book of the Disappeared, alongside hundreds of others.
I haven't seen him since the night of September the 1st, 1995.
What did you think had happened to your son?
I haven't seen him in a long time. I don't think he'll come back. Only God knows where he is. I hope and pray to God that he will come home.
Human rights groups estimate that thousands of people have been killed during Gaddafi's rule after being picked up by the regime's security forces. As the city surrendered its secrets, I began to get a fuller picture of what happened here in the streets and in the hospitals. I've seen people here with gunshot wounds and shrapnel injuries. I've even seen images of some people who were shot at by troops using anti-aircraft guns. The question now for investigators will be who gave the orders for these soldiers to shoot at their own people, because under international law that could be defined as crimes against humanity. The man in charge of Benghazi, the commandant of the city, was one of Gaddafi's own sons.
We are in Venice for the film festival at Gaddafi party, the biggest party.
Saadi Gaddafi is well known on the international party circuit. He was also captain of the Libyan national football team and played professionally in Italy. We now know he flew to Benghazi to take charge as the unrest began. We know he stayed inside the military barracks, the Katiba. We know during the massacre he fled back to Tripoli, but what was his role in it? We contacted several soldiers who'd been inside the military barracks with Saadi Gaddafi. Most were too scared to speak in case the regime swept back into town. But one was so impassioned he did agree to talk. He was a soldier in Gaddafi's army for 18 years. Did you see Saadi Gaddafi, Gaddafi's son, coming to the Katiba?
No. Yes.
Did Saadi Gaddafi give the order to shoot?
When he came that day, he didn't give the order to shoot. He said to give them one more day, and then if nothing changes, fire on them.
Where did he say it, and who to?
He said it near the main gate, close to the management office, where there are army guards. When he came out of the management office, we gathered around him with officers and Gaddafi family members. We created a circle around him with him in the middle. I heard Saadi Gaddafi with my own ears. I swear to God.
I headed for the capital, Tripoli, to search for Saadi Gaddafi. When we arrived, Colonel Gaddafi had been consolidating his power in a bloody clampdown. Unlike Benghazi, people here were too scared to speak openly. We were told suspected dissenters had been dragged from their homes and some of them killed. There had been pockets of resistance, but they'd been swiftly put down, and the foreign media targeted. Our car over there. So this is the difficulty. This is part of the clampdown. People in plain clothes come along and tell you that you have to get out of the area, and of course then they all sort of scatter, but they have arrested some of my colleagues, and they have tortured some of my colleagues, so when they come and they tell you to get in the car, there's not a lot of choice. There'd been pro-Gaddafi rallies around town. People convinced the rebellion was driven by Al-Qaeda. That's what the Libyan leader was telling them. Some were passionate supporters of Gaddafi, others were simply rejecting unrest and the unknown. We wanted to find Saadi. Meetings were set up and then cancelled. It'd be his first interview with Western television during the crisis, and it'd be difficult to question him closely during such a crackdown. Finally, after 5 days, we had a call inviting us to meet him at the zoo. Saadi, I mean, he owns all these lions, but there's one he's particularly fond of, which is in the cage just over there, but he's very keen on wildlife. It was 2 weeks after he'd fled Benghazi, and I wanted to challenge him about his role during the violence, which was led from the headquarters of the military barracks in the city, the Katiba. You have a special relationship, don't you, with Benghazi? Because you're commandant, aren't you?
My father sent me, in the beginning of the crisis, sent me to go to talk with the people there, to see what their demands are. And then they started attacking the Katiba and the police stations, and then they took the weapons. So then I have to leave, you know, because it's very unsafe.
And who were these people who were attacking the Katiba?
The fundamentals.
Did you go to the Katiba as well? I understand you were there.
Yes, because we have a house there.
And did you address the soldiers at all?
No, it's not my job.
I think somebody must have given orders for the soldiers to shoot at some stage.
When those guys, they came with the weapons, they want to attack the Katiba. Of course, they weren't going to get in, and they will kill the soldiers. So they have to defend.
But they haven't got any weapons, these protesters, at that point, have they? They're just shouting and making a lot of noise and throwing stones.
No, they have weapons. Yeah, there's shootings. It was extremely dangerous, the situation in Benghazi.
The testimony from inside Benghazi's military barracks firmly implicates Saadi Gaddafi for giving the orders. When Saadi Gaddafi said this to you and your colleagues, how did you react? Did you all say, yes, we will do it, or did people say, no, this is a bad thing?
The response was Allah Akbar, Muammar and Libya, and everyone started cheering. I'm not saying the whole army did that, but the ones surrounding him. Most of them belong to the Gaddafi family and their supporters. What we uncovered in Benghazi will be of interest to the International Criminal Court, the ICC. It's already investigating the Gaddafi family for crimes against humanity. It's identified events in Benghazi as being of special interest. It'll want to know who was in charge, who had authority. For now, Saadi, like his father, remains defiant. How do you see the future of Libya now? How would you like it to resolve itself?
I think we will be more united. We've never been divided before, and this is the first time. And as soon as we solve all the problems, all these issues, we will be very happy and we will never be divided again. This is a very hard lesson.
Yes, it is, and because there have been a lot of deaths, haven't there? Lots of people have been killed in this. How do you think you're going to win back Benghazi? I mean, it's the second biggest city, isn't it? And there's a lot of people there determined not to come back into your father's rule.
There's many ways, but I think the priority now for the Libyan people and for the government is to restore the security to Benghazi. Those gangs, those mobs with the weapons, we don't want to see them in Libya anymore.
We can no longer get through to Benghazi and the people featured in this program, like Ahmed. Without the intervention of the West, Gaddafi's troops would almost certainly have taken the city, crushing any resistance. If the West backs down now, Gaddafi will show no mercy to the people of Benghazi. So we're stuck, involved in a conflict unlikely to end until his regime falls. And on Thursday night, a Panorama special.
Would you like to kiss your wife?
We go undercover on the trail of the sham wedding fraudsters. How easy is it to buy yourself a fake bride?